Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, also on Spotify, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. I can tell you that thing is never inactive. People are always talking Heat on there, even during the offseason, even more than a month away from the draft. So check out everything that's offered there. Link is right here in the description on the YouTube channel and on the podcast feeds. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm telling you to download the Autograph app. First thing, it's free. It's easy. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. That'll guarantee it. Use the code 5 again, jump on there, and you can get all of your Miami Heat content in one place. You can actually find episodes of Five on the Floor there. I was not aware of that. So check it out, autograph.io, or just go to the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, look for Autograph, download the app. It's where real fans get unreal rewards. Just this week, they dropped a BAM jersey, autographed jersey, at more than 10% off what you would find it anywhere else. So check it out. You're looking for some unique items on the Heat. And if you root for any other teams, you can find them on there as well across the sports spectrum. So check it out. Autograph. Download the app today. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Today's floor plan, it's actually about another team, but what the Heat might be able to draw from it. The Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers, who to a lot of people were barely a play-in team. That's what it looks like prior to this season. Are now going to the Eastern Conference Finals against the rested Boston Celtics. And in my view, a lot of this does apply to the Heat. And we'll get into some of the things that we've learned here, or we think we could learn going forward, and that Miami can learn. But let's start with this, okay? Miami fell behind by about 20 points in Indiana late in the season in a game that we talked about targeting for about 3 weeks. They played no defense at the beginning of that game. Yes, they were banged up and all the rest of it. They made a furious comeback. They got a couple of bad calls at the end of the game, which the NBA actually admitted. Remember the Tyler Hero play at the very end of that game? The Heat officials are still talking about that one. But the reality was, okay, if you simply won that game, a lot of stuff might have looked different this season because you probably wouldn't have been in the plan. The plan is where Jimmy Butler got hurt. Jimmy Butler getting hurt sunk the whole thing. And we've talked the whole year. We talked the whole year about taking the regular season more seriously. And obviously that's something Pat Riley believes in because his entire press conference was in some way or another about availability. They had some guys available in that game. It was not enough. They had a healthy roster, actually, if you remember, or mostly healthy roster by that point. And so we're going to be looking at that game for a while because if so, the seeding is different. You never know how other things are going to play out. Of course, the Knicks, look, the Bucks fell apart with injuries. The Knicks fell apart with injuries. That's something else to take from this. It's not just the Heat. You got to have a deep roster these days because guys are, no matter how much they're resting during the regular season, they're all getting hurt in the playoffs. And in the Knicks case, Alex, Tom Thibodeau, maybe that plays into it a little bit, although there were some freak things with the Knicks as well. But there were also some wear injuries that appeared. But that's one of the things I'm taking is that this, again, as rocky as this season was, as many guys as were out, as inconsistent as some of the Heat's play was, and even as they dropped to about a net rating of 0 for the season, they still had a chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals if a couple of things had broken right during the regular season. So I'm just regretting that Pacer game right now during the regular season because we might still be covering basketball.
Yep. I mean, that game, it's great that you start this off with that because I wasn't even thinking about that. Congratulations to them, right? But it does kind of, I feel like, fall into that line of thinking that the Heat like to talk about themselves with when it comes to if things break your way, you can be in the conference finals. You have to feel the competitive team. You always got to be about winning and that type of message. And I think it kind of got confirmed, right? Because it's like, if you would have won a couple of more games, if you would have executed better, you're in the same position. And now the problem is, right, it's like usually when things break right for one team, one or two teams, it's breaking very much the complete other way for the other teams involved. And unfortunately for the Heat, like, they were one of those teams. I mean, the Heat, even after all of this, with all these banged up teams, the Heat were probably just more injured than anybody, right? Like, I don't know if that's changed, though, just with at the scale that it was, where it's like you weren't only missing your best player, you're missing a lot of your offense too. Like, it was just, it's unfortunate. So you can look at it in the sense of, like, win a couple more games, and this could be you back in the conference finals versus Boston instead of having to play them in round one. The problem is they were just as hurt, if not more, than other teams. But I mean, that game is definitely like that's where it all changed. And I think we knew it at the time, but now it's just to a whole other level now that the Pacers are in the freaking conference finals. Like, they're a good team. Like, I know everybody's going to talk about how they weren't supposed to be here and all of that. That's a good team who traded for an all-star at the deadline, and it worked for them. It added, another half-court player who they can get offense from. They're getting, pretty good play out of their role players. Carlisle has done it for years. They deserve some credit. But, yeah, things broke right for them.
Yeah, and look, again, before the season started, most were not projecting them to be even a second-round team. And I think that's the other thing to be taken.
And even
from
after
this.
the Siakam trade, same thing.
Right. And if you look at both conferences, both teams in surprise teams in the conference finals made significant moves at the deadline. Now, the Heat did too. They picked up Terry Rozier. Their guy was not available. Okay, once you got to the postseason. But it wasn't just Siakam on one side. It was also, picking up Gafford and PJ Washington for Dallas, because without them, Dallas is not in the conference final. And I would argue their achievement is more significant because they've come out of that conference to get to the conference final, which, again, to beat OKC and to beat the Clippers, two teams that at various points of the season, you're talking about a 1 seed and another team that was kind of a dark horse to get to the finals. So I think for a lot of Heat fans, this is going to confirm the fact that you have to keep changing the roster no matter when. And I feel like, again, the Heat's counter to that will be what we did. We added Terry Rozier. We had a position of need. We had a malcontent on the roster. We needed to upgrade our ability to get to the basket, make plays offensively when things broke down. We got a guy. He started to develop into that for us. And then he had this, I don't know, weird neck injury that nobody can really explain. And so he was not available at that time. It may not have mattered with Jimmy going out anyway, but it's just, I do think for a lot of Heat fans will be like, okay, you make moves, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a superstar move. In the Indiana case, Siakam is borderline. He's a star. He's not a superstar. Now, he did make his first 5 shots today, and obviously was a big factor in everything that they've done, because without him, Halliburton's decline, which was significant after the All-Star game, they would not have been able to make up for that. But also, Alex, to look at the rest of the roster, though, you can see some things. And again, we can talk about they caught breaks, so the Knicks were hurt and all that. They are in the conference finals. There are 13 teams in the Eastern Conference that are done playing. The Pacers are one of the 2 teams still playing. That is an achievement, okay? I judge teams by conference finals. Okay, like, to me, if you're in a conference finals, you're contending. I mean, you're on the doorstep, and even if they get blown out 4-0, they still achieve something this year. But I mean, if you look at their roster, like, Nembhard was huge for them, 2nd-round pick, 31st overall, I believe. Was like he's playing behind Halliburton, he's playing with Halliburton. We've talked about TJ McConnell, what he's contributed to them. Obi Toppin, who played a big role for them at times this season. That was a small trade with the Knicks, of all teams. It doesn't always have to be. They made one major move. They basically gave up a couple of first-round picks, right, and a second for Siakam, essentially. And that's a major move, and people didn't think necessarily they were ready to make that kind of move. They did. Credit to them for that. But this also does show you that the fringe moves matter. The 2nd-round picks matter, hitting on some of those guys. And then also fit matters. And I think that's a big thing here as we talk about the Heat going into the offseason, is that Indiana found a style. Okay, like Carlisle, came up with a style that was completely different than what he used in Dallas, what he's used for other Indiana teams, other Detroit teams he's coached. He rides his guys hard. Okay, not the same way as Tibbs does, but he does. And he came up with a style that was more free flowing, more to Halliburton's pacing and all the rest of that. And they improved just enough defensively to
Yep.
be able to still be effective. So I think the Heat, they have to decide what their style is this offseason. Like, what are we playing? Like, are we going to play slow down with Jimmy? Or are we going to try to open it up more offensively? I think that's another thing that can be picked up from Indiana. Now, I'm not saying that, look, again, they're a great basketball team. I don't think they are. But I do think they've maximized what they have by at least knowing what their identity is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think there was some growing pains along the way after the Siakam thing, where it's like it wasn't all just okay, perfect. They're winning a ton of games and everything looks amazing. And just looking at some stats, I was looking at like their pre-Siakam and post-Siakam trade stats, and funny enough, like they had one of the best transition offensive ratings before the Siakam trade, and it was much closer to the bottom afterwards. So I think like having, it kind of relates to what we're talking about here, the conflict of styles, because Siakam is very much like a half court type of player who can play kind of slow, when he has the ball in his hands, not very, like it's not a fast paced offense when he is playing his game out there. And I think it shows that like, it's kind of worth it trying to figure some of those things out where like, it's not everything has to be a perfect fit. There is upside for things, and it goes back to just a fundamental like, okay, we want to build around this thing, we want to make this work, right? And it's not just giving up on it, when things get tough and just being like, oh well, we've seen it, right? Like, have you gone through all the paths necessary to maximize what you have? And I think we can have a conversation as far as like whether the Heat have or haven't in these past years. We didn't really get to see it this past season, like the theory of the team after, all the acquisitions. And so it's a little bit tough to have the conversation, but it's also tough to just say, pick a style, because you have different types of players. And then like Spo mentioned, when he accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally, let out there that they were juggling 3 offensive philosophies, that's like, that was, I know I've already mentioned it a bunch of times, but that was telling to me because he had a hard time balancing it. And I think it's just like, those are the growing pains of trying to add, or of like trying to diversify your offense and doing new things. And I think like he went through it. Like a lot of the times in the last couple of seasons when it's bam, slow down, face up, like that was not really how the offense looked in the beginning of the Jimmy era. You know what I mean? Like they've tried to add these new things. They haven't really, found a perfect balance. But I think like he would tell you this is part of like the process to getting to the other side, because if not, it would have just kind of been where it was before, where it was like kind of what the Sacramento Kings do, a lot of like that dribble handoff, split action offense, and playing off of that, which is fine too. And I think we all like that part of their offense, but like they've clearly tried to add more layers. And I think it sounds nice on paper, but when you don't balance it perfectly, you kind of have what the Heat had this season, especially with all the availability stuff. And so that's like something I'm definitely looking forward to next season, to just see like how they, approach that.
Well, and I think the other thing that'll come out of this, I mean, you mentioned offense specifically, is I think that Indiana getting here does speak to the need to lean into offense more. Boston was historically good offensively for good portions of the season. Now they're playing another good offensive team in the Eastern Conference Finals. And look, Riley harped on the 21st ranked offense. He said it several times during his press conference. It has to be a focus this offseason to just be a more pleasing style of ball. I mean, Indiana came out today. Look, you're not going to shoot the ball like that anytime, okay? Particularly in a game 7 on the road. But they were shooting 80% from the field, like through the first like quarter and a half of that game. Miami had like one game like that the whole year. That was that game 2 in Boston, which was, which again is going to look back as somewhat fluky. If in retrospect, it was kind of a great achievement that they got that one game. But they have to lean into offense a little bit more. I think it's clear at this point. We know the way that the Nuggets can play offensively, and we're doing this episode prior to Minnesota and the Nuggets playing. Minnesota is better defensively than Denver, so it's a little bit of a different style. But
it's so hard though, because like the Pacers are so built towards offense, and like
they are, but
they're not complete cones on defense in the playoffs. Like it's not like everybody is just doing whatever they want. They're still not an elite defense, but like I think it lends to the idea where, like, if you have this great, fantastic offense where you have so many levers you can pull and it's mostly reliable and mostly potent, then the defense just needs to be good enough. And I feel like that's kind of like what happened with the Nuggets too, except I think their defense last year and this year even is better than that Pacers defense for sure. But I think that is a style that you're talking about. And I don't think the Heat fit into that style with the way the team is built, So like, it's just so much easier said than done, like he's
Right.
trying all these different things, but like none of them are, like that great options.
Well, and the reality is, honestly,
Pacers
as
are like
as
number
long as
one in offensive rating, right? Number one in half or number two in half court offensive rating. Like that's an elite offensive team.
But as long as, in my view, as long as Jimmy and Bam are your top two offensive options, you're not going to be a top 12 offense. I just don't think at this stage. And we've talked about it many times. You probably will be a top 12 defense, but you're probably not going to be a top 12 offense. And the question is, who do you add as the other pieces to get you there, and where does the usage go for the two of them, and what is the style that you're going to play? And I know that Heat fans are going to say it's simple, just go get Donovan Mitchell. Maybe so, okay, but I'm saying, like, as currently constructed, it is going to be a damn challenge, available or not, to create that kind of offense. But they have to be better. I think we all agree about that. All right. Speaking of things that can be better, my prize picks today, but that's okay. There's always another game. Go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5 FIVE, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Is legal again in the state of Florida. That's right. It's legal again. Their new arena game. Set your lineup anywhere between 2 and 4 players. It's like a power play. You get them all right, you win big. That's how this works now. So prizepicks.com, the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, use the code 5. We also recommend Better Edge. We know that some of you may bet with another partner here in the state of Florida. We recommend this one. Why? There's no VIG. That means you're not just giving away money to somebody for nothing. And also, it's a marketplace, so you can find the line that you want. So go to betteredge.com. That's with an O in it, betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN, and you'll get $20 to play. And again, we're going to have a conference finals, which all 4 of us are going to enter this time. A conference finals, basically prop tourney there. Various things that could go on there in terms of, how many games one of the teams going to win, and et cetera, et cetera. We'll have a contest, and we're going to do a giveaway related to that. So look for that over the next 24 hours. I'll put it up on the 5 Reasons Twitter page. So I'll just ask this question before we close. Indiana, we talked before the season, okay, what are the teams that are kind of, in that upper class, right? So in the East, not that it's a big one, right? So Boston, we knew. Milwaukee, we figured, although I had some reservations about their defense that proved true even before the injuries. New York, we thought would be competitive, but probably Philadelphia might be better. Embiid's injury played into that. They obviously had some turmoil moving off of Harden. Things changed there. I think we thought Orlando would be better. I don't think we thought they'd be in a 4-5 game. And then Cleveland was one of those teams, again, depending on fit, which it seems to have a lot to do with them, might be in the mix there. But then Miami was kind of in that tier with Cleveland, maybe even ahead of Orlando, maybe a little ahead of Indiana. Maybe sort of, right behind Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, kind of on the fringe of that. I think that's where, and with New York, that's kind of where most people had them. Has something significantly changed before we go into the offseason? Because there's going to be player movement, but now you've got a team that was not considered to be in the first tier or even the second tier that's in the conference finals, right? Embiid's health going forward, always going to be an issue.
The
The
Magic
Knicks
are
have
coming
to do
too.
something. Randall, the Magic are coming. Cleveland might lose Mitchell, or they might move off of Mitchell, if that's his inclination.
And if you want to
I
talk
mean,
about what Cleveland might do, I know we haven't really talked about this possibility, and I don't want to be the buzzkill, be the Debbie Downer of all Heat fans, but there is a scenario with all this Garland smoke where they flip him for a different star,
right.
and instead it's just Cleveland with a different look coming in, which would of
Yeah.
course kill all of our spirits. But I think that's possible too, since you asked about what can change. If they flip Garland for Ingram, maybe. I don't know if that would make sense for both teams, but something like that, right?
Right.
Teams willing, certain stars that teams are willing to move.
Rebalance the roster a little bit because Mitchell and Garland are both so ball dominant. No, that makes sense. I mean, I think,
Or even Jared Allen,
look,
if they want to move him. I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing: if Indiana somehow upsets Boston to go to the finals, and they are going to be a historic conference finals underdog, they are going to be. I mean, we talked about what the Heat were as an underdog against them. Even when healthier, I think Indiana may be equal to that in terms of underdog against the rested Boston team now, particularly at the level they're at in the playoffs now, where everybody's going to expect. I mean, look, 18 different, including our friends George and Izzy, 18 different ESPN employees picked the Knicks to beat the Pacers. Nobody picked the Pacers. So this is going to be
Wow.
another 18.
I didn't
Nobody.
know that.
Now, at least Izzy went Knicks in 7. This is going to be a clean sweep. Okay. Everybody is going to pick Boston. So I don't think anybody's really taking the Pacers all that seriously. But with that said, if they got 2 or 3 games in this series, then you would start to talk about them. Okay, this is a team on the rise, has gotten some playoff grit, some playoff experience. They've been really good at home. Okay, and now they just went into Game 7, and I know the Knicks are beat up, but they won a Game 7 in New York. That's not easy, regardless. We're going to start talking about them in that tier, and they may add. I mean, I know they've given up picks, but now that they sort of have a build here, they've got some interesting young players. Neesmith was a pretty good pickup for them. I mentioned Toppin. Nembhard, has some ability there that they played off of him. So, and they never traded Miles Turner. All these years it was, they're going to trade Miles Turner. They still have Miles Turner there. So I just think if you're Miami, okay, if you don't make a major move, I don't know that they're going to be considered in that second tier necessarily behind, let's say, Boston. They may be considered to be. Again, we'll see what happens with Dame in Milwaukee, and the Bucks have limited flexibility, but we see what they do. I think we have to at least put this in the context, like, this is not a great conference. That's one of the reasons Indiana could make the conference final. But there are a lot of competitive teams there, and if Miami does nothing, then Heat fans are going to be like, okay, we're falling behind even further. Indiana, as you said, is the youngest. They're the youngest team in the league right now. Or Greg said that on playback. The youngest team in the league.
Wow. And yeah, I mean, it really speaks to the parity in the league now. And I know it's still kind of unbalanced because everybody knows the West is still stronger. Because both conferences, when you look at it, are deep with competitive teams, like you said. But like most of the real best teams are in the West. The thing is, there's still plenty of good teams in the East, just not like amazing. And so Boston looks like fantastic and racks up this nice regular season standings. Record because of this. But no, not to take shots at Boston, go Pacers. But I do think just like looking at the way this all turned out, it's a shame, man. It's a shame. It could have been the Heat right back, and it could have been us, watching the Heat lose to Boston at home and watching them win in Boston another year. And instead, they got the short end of the stick this time. I think people are still going to throw them into that category of like the second tier East team next season because of the benefit of the doubt. And I guess because we never really got to see how they were supposed to look. Right. And I think that with Terry and with Jaquez and Jovic involved, Tyler in the mix is like a third or fourth option. We just didn't get to see that. And I know like a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when they hear me say that. It's just true. Like, I'm not saying that team wins a title, but like
it's true, but they are going to roll their eyes. I mean, I if the Heat are going to try to sell that again,
they can't do nothing because doing nothing means you likely let like a couple of guys walk, replace them with better minimum guys. You draft somebody. Right. That's the do nothing scenario for Heat fans.
There has to be an in between giving up everything from the star, which again you may not get him anyway, particularly because there's not really that many available, and they all seem to have extenuating circumstances involved with them, or doing nothing. So it's this striking this balance of not doing too much for the wrong guy. But something has to be done. Like they can't come back, like you said, with just, okay, Caleb's gone, maybe Haywood's gone. I don't even know. We're going to bring Major Passons on. I don't feel like they have as many guys in the pipeline as they've had, particularly up front. It seems a little bit thin. Doesn't mean they can't locate a guy or they haven't targeted a guy. Alondas Williams is really the only one that kind of intrigues me. Honestly, I don't know if Swider can fill a Duncan Robinson role. I don't know if he's ever going to be a good enough defender. It seems like the Kane thing is sailed. The Orlando Robinson thing is kind of sailed. Like, I don't know, where they're at with it. Like, who's next in that? Like, we've gone into previous off seasons. Like, it's just Alondas Williams is the one. And I'm curious to see how some of it seems to be on athleticism and all this and bounce that he's got, and I want to see how that translates at the next level, which when he gets consistent minutes, which he hasn't gotten yet. So I think that again they have to do something more than just It doesn't mean they have to overpay these guys like Caleb, etc. But it just means they have to do something more than, like you said, just replace them with minimums, or they got to really hit on the minimums. And it's funny because the one of the biggest minimum success stories of this entire postseason is DJJ. Is Derek Jones Jr. And I'm not arguing that the Heat should have kept him. He was $9 million a year at the time. They let him go to Portland. We'll do another pod on that, and maybe during the next series. But I'm just saying, like, you've got to hit on one or two of those probably, like Philly hit on Oubre.
Bam's friend, athletic wing who plays defense. You know,
I know you like him. Greg does too.
Point of attack defense. He was good at that. He was good in the zone.
I know. Well, he's only 27 too, so maybe you'll have another chance at him someday. But it doesn't seem like he's going to get paid this offseason. He could be. He could be on the Bam retirement tour. Not this year. No, not this year. Not on the money he's going to make. That is gone. But I just say they have to hit on some minimums. Nobody was really well, you might have been. I was not arguing for them to keep DJJ at that price at that time.
I was. So I'm not going to say like I really wanted him. I always liked him though.
I liked him too, but then my whole thing was he going to hit corner threes, because that was a necessity. And like and now the last 3 games, all of a sudden, he's a sniper. And
they have guys that generate that are just, they generate more gravity on the court. And I know it's another word that people are going to roll their eyes at, but like just guys who demand a lot of attention, if you want to put it a different way.
And the Heat don't have a Luka on offense, okay, basically, or a Kyrie.
Get a Luka. Go find a Luka. Andy Ellisberg, Pat Riley, Adam Simon. That's it. It's as simple as that. Go find a Luka.
They got a Jovic. We'll see how that goes. All right, that's it for us for today. Check out our sponsors. Download the Autograph app. Use the code 5. Use the code 5 for Prize Picks, all again spelled out, and then Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN and look for our next contest. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.